I posed as a server at a charity gala to catch my husband cheating, but what I discovered that night went far beyond betrayal. If you're reading this story, pause for a second and tell me where you're watching from: New York, California, Texas, or somewhere across the globe. And if you appreciate quiet karma stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in the staff changing room at the luxurious Kalahari resort, adjusting a black vest over a crisp white shirt. The name tag pinned to my chest read Emily, not my real name, a fake one to get me inside the party. I had never done anything like this before. I was a marketing director, not a waitress, but desperate circumstances call for desperate measures. Mark, my husband, had been acting strange for 3 months, coming home late, whispering phone calls behind closed doors, a new perfume scent I had never bought for him. Classic signs, I thought, but I tried to ignore them. We had been married for 6 good years. 6 years, I told myself, until 3 weeks ago when I found an invitation in the pocket of his jacket, the Clean Water for Africa charity gala. The biggest charity event in the region, bringing together CEO, business leaders, and socialites from across the country. By invitation only. When I asked about the gala, he told me spouses weren't allowed. Just a social obligation, purely charitable, boring business talk. I wanted to believe him, but then I noticed the signs: fresh haircut at an expensive salon, bespoke tuxedo, sudden gym routine. It wasn't preparation for a boring event. It was preparation for someone else. My best friend Rachel worked for a high-end event staffing company. One phone call later, and I had a job serving champagne at the very gala. My husband insisted I couldn't attend. I told Mark I was flying to Boston to visit my parents that weekend. He seemed relieved. The manager's voice came over the speaker in the changing room. All servers to your positions. Doors open in 5 minutes. I took a deep breath, picked up my silver tray, and walked into the main hall. The African ballroom was vast and stunning. Carved wooden statues of lions, elephants, and giraffes mounted along the soaring walls. Chandeliers shaped like ancient baobab trees cast warm golden light like a desert sunset. Round tables draped in white linen were decorated with Zulu-style clay vases and ostrich feathers. A jazz band blended seamlessly with African djembe drums in the corner. Everything screamed extravagance. This was the world where I should have been standing on Mark's arm if he had ever invited me. I stationed myself near the safari-style tent bar with a clear view of the main entrance. Guests began arriving in polished groups, laughter echoing through the hall, greeting each other with handshakes and polite embraces. I immediately recognized a few high-profile figures: CEO of regional corporations, a senator, even reality TV stars who had appeared on Forbes. A well-known female tech entrepreneur waved to a group across the room. A billionaire CFO took a drink from my tray without even looking down. At events like this, servers become invisible. Exactly what I needed. Mark arrived about 20 minutes later, and my breath caught in my throat. He looked more handsome than ever. His new tuxedo fit perfectly. That wide, sincere smile, my heart ached, remembering it from the early days. But it wasn't for me. It was for the woman walking behind him. Her hand lightly hooked around his arm, casual yet intimate. Young, perhaps 27 or 28, with long black hair swept into an elegant updo, decorated with delicate feathers to match the gala theme. A bright red dress hugged her curves like a modern safari goddess. She brushed his arm as they walked in, giggling at something he whispered. My knuckles whitened on the champagne tray. I forced my head down as they passed. Mark didn't glance at me. She politely refused a glass of champagne, her hand subtly resting on her stomach. Pregnant, my mind whispered. My heart raced. I moved closer, pretending to clear empty glasses. Mark introduced her to a CEO. This is Jessica Rivera, our new senior accountant. Jessica's handshake was firm, her smile bright. I noticed the knowing looks from other guests. They all knew. Throughout the evening, I watched them drift through the room like a real couple. Not overtly affectionate, but every gesture radiated intimacy. I served their table quietly, my heart shattering. And then, the cruelest moment, Tom Von Enterprise's chief legal officer, a little drunk on premium champagne, raised his glass. A toast to the happiest couple tonight, Mark and Jessica. When are you making it official? The room fell silent. A few awkward laughs broke out, but Mark and Jessica exchanged that look I knew too well, a shared secret, the old familiarity of love. My stomach twisted. I couldn't stay. I set the tray down and fled to the staff corridor, ignoring the manager's surprise. In the empty hallway, I leaned back against the wall, chest heaving. A wedding. He was planning to marry her, my husband of 6 years, the man who once promised forever, was leaving me for her. The shock gradually gave way to anger, hot, sharp, clarifying anger. I wouldn't break, not here. Not now. I had the truth. Later, I sat in a hotel room, my laptop open. The live feed from the security camera I had installed showed every detail. Mark arrived home late, still in his tuxedo, hair disheveled. He dialed my phone. I let it go to voicemail. He sat in the driveway, white Range Rover missing. It had been towed. He looked confused, uneasy. He grabbed a duffel bag and entered the house. Every room revealed meticulous planning. Paintings gone, the display cabinet empty, closets cleared except for his side, my favorite possessions gone. The envelope on the dining table contained my wedding ring, a thick lawyer's envelope, and photographs from the gala showing Mark and Jessica intimately together. He would understand soon enough. The private investigator I hired captured every detail. High resolution, time-stamped, geotagged photos of them leaving the gala, kissing in the street, confirming everything. Mark's panic began. He searched the house for money, documents, valuables, gone. I had planned everything. Every step was calculated. The morning light revealed the envelope's contents. Divorce papers filed under my name, handled by my cousin Arthur Vanderlyn, a top high-asset divorce lawyer. I hadn't just caught him. I was taking control, and Mark's realization of betrayal, real betrayal, was only beginning. The morning after the gala, the city outside was quiet, oblivious to the storm unfolding in our home. Mark Henderson had no idea that everything he once controlled, our house, our finances, the company he so arrogantly thought was his domain, was no longer his. I watched through the high-resolution cameras I had strategically installed weeks before. Each room told the story of my careful orchestration. Empty closets where my belongings had once been, the pristine dining table with only the envelope and wedding ring remaining. Mark entered the master bedroom, looking for the familiar signs of normalcy, only to find emptiness. His eyes widened with disbelief. Every second of his realization was captured on the hidden cameras. The envelope contained more than divorce papers. It contained the evidence of his duplicity, prepared with a precision that left nothing to chance. High resolution, time-stamped, geotagged photographs of him and Jessica leaving the gala, laughing and kissing under the streetlights, were the centerpiece. Each shot was proof: adultery, deceit, betrayal. He could no longer deny it, not to me, not to anyone. Mark reached for my wedding ring first. His fingers trembled. He slipped it into his pocket as if it were a talisman, a small remnant of control. But control had already slipped through his fingers. Next he reached for the envelope. The first pages outlined the official divorce filing. Petitioner Emma Vanderlyn, respondent Mark Henderson, my name carefully crafted to assert my independence. His disbelief was palpable. A short, dry laugh escaped him, but the sound was hollow. He flipped through the pages, eyes scanning the evidence. The private investigator I had hired, James Heron, had captured every incriminating moment with meticulous care. These weren't snapshots taken by friends or passers-by. They were professionally framed, undeniable proof. And then came the letter from my cousin, Arthur Vanderlyn, the city's top divorce attorney, specializing in high-asset cases. Mark read it aloud, his voice shaky. Dear Mr. Mark Henderson, we represent MS, Emma Vanderlyn Henderson, in this divorce proceeding. By the time you read this letter, MS. Henderson has vacated the marital residence at 42 Blackwood Lane. Please note Clause 14, Section B of the prenuptial agreement you signed 11 years ago. Mark froze. The prenuptial agreement, the one he had made me sign without reading carefully. He remembered now, the clause my father had insisted on, a clause that protected me entirely in the event of adultery. All assets acquired during the marriage, residences, company shares, financial interests, would belong to the injured party. For 6 years he had believed he controlled everything, but the truth was far different. I controlled everything he had ever thought was his. Mark's first instinct was to panic. He called Nathaniel, his longtime business partner, as though an ally could save him. I listened from my laptop, my coffee untouched. Mark's voice was frantic, broken, a mixture of anger and fear. Nathaniel, calm and measured, delivered the final blow. I now controlled 51% of Lexington Corp. The controlling shares, the very heart of the company Mark had believed he owned. Mark's realization hit like a sledgehammer. Every decision he had ever made was now irrelevant. Every plan he had carefully crafted to maintain power was meaningless. Nathaniel confirmed my ownership and authority over the company, and Mark understood that he had no standing. Not with me, not with the board, not in the world he had attempted to dominate. I watched as Mark tried to make sense of the unraveling empire he once manipulated. He ran to the kitchen, to the safe, to his office, searching for cash, valuables, documents. Everything gone. I had erased his tracks, leaving only the envelope, the wedding ring, and the professional proof of his infidelity. The anger that had fueled me was now tempered with a cold clarity. This wasn't mere revenge, this was justice executed with precision. Every move I had made was calculated, deliberate. Every moment Mark thought he had advantage, I had anticipated. The next steps were methodical. I informed the board of directors, provided the evidence of embezzlement, and outlined the steps needed to ensure corporate integrity. Mark's personal misuse of company funds, luxury hotel stays, extravagant dinners labeled as business negotiations, gifts for Jessica disguised as client entertainment, was now a matter of record. The internal audit began before he had even finished his morning coffee. Mark's attempts to salvage his life were futile. He called Jessica, the woman who had shared his ambition and greed, but her response was a cold and sharp rejection. She had loved him only for the lifestyle he provided, the illusion of wealth and influence. Now that illusion was gone, and with it her loyalty, Mark realized too late that his mistress was just another casualty of his arrogance. The corporate measures continued. My lawyers froze his accounts, revoked access to company resources, and ensured the internal audit would uncover every discrepancy. Mark was isolated, stripped of resources, power, and influence. Every attempt to contact allies, friends, or professional networks failed because I had controlled the narrative. I had anticipated every potential intervention, and my team had acted decisively. By mid-morning, Mark had no choice but to confront the reality: he had lost everything. The Porsche, once a symbol of status, was immobilized remotely through the vehicle tracking app my technician had accessed. The house he had once flaunted was entirely under my control. Even his credit cards were frozen under orders based on evidence of misappropriation. Through the cameras, I observed him collapsing on the garage floor, his head resting on the steering wheel, a man broken not by external force but by his own actions. Every sob, every word of disbelief, every frantic movement was a testament to the consequences of betrayal. He muttered, "How did everything fall apart?" And I allowed myself a quiet smile. He had built this cage for himself, and now he was trapped. I provided a final act of measured kindness. In the pocket of his blazer, a prepaid card with $5000 accompanied by a handwritten note. "Mark, you never read the prenup or the company bylaws carefully. This amount will help you stand up. Use it wisely." Not enough to sustain the lavish life he craved, but enough to survive without hitting rock bottom. Justice, not cruelty, guided my actions. Mark's final attempts to manipulate the narrative collapsed spectacularly. The email he sent to journalists and the IRS, intended as a whistleblower act, became the very proof of his fraud. My prior disclosure and careful framing ensured that he had exposed only the crimes he committed, not any new wrongdoing. The federal authorities acted swiftly. By afternoon, Mark Henderson was in custody, facing charges for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to defraud the government. From my vantage point, I watched the final chapter unfold. Mark's freedom, power, and reputation evaporated, leaving only isolation and regret. Jessica, once complicit in his schemes, observed the proceedings from a distance, her face impassive. The consequences of greed and deception are often revealed not in loud confrontations, but in the quiet unraveling of life itself. And then life moved forward. Lexington Corp., now under my stewardship, thrived. I reinstated corporate integrity, ensured compliance with tax authorities, and expanded operations into Asia, focusing on sustainability and ethical growth. The empire my father had built, once thought distant, was now my own. I reclaimed the Vanderlyn name fully, stepping into a legacy that had protected me even before I knew the full extent of its power. Personal life, too, flourished. Nathaniel, once Mark's trusted partner, became my confidant, my husband, and my equal. We married quietly in Tuscany, surrounded only by friends who mattered. Our daughter, Lily, bright and spirited, became a daily reminder that life could be rebuilt, stronger and freer than before. Mark faded from my life. I no longer tracked him, no longer watched him. The consequences had been delivered, and nature of justice had been realized. Occasionally I received letters. I never opened them. Curiosity and malice had no place in a life rebuilt on integrity and foresight. I moved through the world with calm assurance. The gala, the betrayal, the meticulous planning. It all became a story I carried silently, a lesson on foresight, restraint, and the quiet power of preparation. Each day I walked into the office, looked out over the city, and understood that living better, with clarity and control, was the ultimate triumph. Mark Henderson had lost everything: money, influence, love, and trust. I had gained everything that mattered: freedom, dignity, and the legacy of a family who had quietly prepared for generations to protect what was theirs. And in that knowledge I found peace. Some people dig their own graves and scream for intervention. Others walk through the wreckage and quietly rebuild. I chose the latter. 5 years later, the consequences of betrayal and arrogance remained clear. Mark, aged and diminished, worked in obscurity, visited rarely by family. Jessica, a fleeting memory, had moved on, and I, Emma Vanderlyn, stood on stages, accepted awards for entrepreneurship, and led a corporation that exemplified integrity and foresight. There was no gloating, no triumphalism. Just the calm satisfaction of a life restored and enhanced. The night at the Kalahari had changed everything. A marriage collapsed, deception was exposed, and illusion gave way to reality. But I had reclaimed myself, strong and intolerant of lies. The best revenge, after all, is not destruction. It is living better, thriving beyond what those who betrayed you could imagine, and that is exactly what I chose to do.